Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell in the upper right-hand corner. Follow me on all forms of social media. Check me out at thatdrummerguy.com and enjoy the following presentation. Oh, totally. I'd love to do it. And thank you for taking the time to be able to do this.
Of course, absolutely.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's great to be able to talk to you. And of course, with an amazing new album and band coming to the works in the next couple weeks with Dirty Shirley and the self-titled album coming out in 2 weeks through Frontiers Music. I've been listening to this album over the last week, and I love everything that's going on with this album, from the lineup, the songwriting, the production, just everything just feels like such an amazingly solid album from start to finish.
Which is crazy because nobody was ever in a room together at any one point in time. It was all done remotely. Got a drummer in Florida and a singer in Croatia and a bass player in the UK and myself in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and it's great to see that even though sometimes not even living in the same country, you're able to have such great musical chemistry together, and the songs can just come out sounding so amazingly well.
Yeah, I've got sort of the system. I mean, this is pretty common, do records this way now, but and I wouldn't say it's ideal, but it's just a different way to do a record. It's not, I have a way of operating in these situations that seems to work, where I just lay the bed. Compose the music and lay the musical bed down for the singer to, write to and then perform over and, feed the guitar tracks to the drummer, then the bass player after that, then send it on to the singer. So it's like an assembly line. And, it works in a sense that it's very efficient, time-wise and expense-wise, which is a practical consideration, unfortunately, these days.
Yeah, and I can also imagine with time as well as money and everything that's going into it as well, because of, all the different bands and projects that everyone in this band is involved with. I mean, it's great to be able, when you do have some free time, being able to work on something like Dirty Shirley and being able to get that stuff done. Yeah, it is. I love it. I have a studio situation I've built over the decades that is really home for me, and I feel like I'm in a situation where I know what I'm doing and I can control the results. And that's not always the case in the studios. It's like a laboratory, but imagine going to somebody else's laboratory. You're not sure where everything's at and what the results are going to be. But in my studio, it's I built it, so I fine-tuned it to the point I know what what the sounds, what kind of sounds I'm going to be getting, and if I want to change gears and plug into different equipment, I know how to do that, and I know the results that I'm going to get. And that takes a lot of stress out of the process, because when you go work in a studio you're not familiar with, you're just sort of in a place that you're in an alien environment, no matter how nice the studio is. And you just can, it's nice to feel you're at home, and because stress is not conducive to creativity. Oh yeah, that's so true. And I mean, when you are actually able to have the means to be able to have the space to be able to build a studio and being able to build up all the right equipment that you're looking for, and then being able to get the right sounds, the right acoustics, the right electronics to be able to make everything go the way that it is. I mean, when you do take all that pressure off of being in the studio, just like you mentioned, when you go to different studios, when you're able to just relax in your own and be able to just focus on the music can come off so much stronger.
Yeah. And it's such a critical part of the process. It's unbelievable. I'm not saying you can't get wonderful results going other places, but I guess my point is that it's definitely more expensive, and it's more of a question mark of what's going to happen. You just don't know. I've gone into some of the greatest studios in the world, and found myself being very underwhelmed and having to struggle to get results. And I've thought about that a lot, because back in the day when we used to work, in the early docking days and things like that, we'd work on our own with really primitive equipment, but we'd end up like coming up with these lo-fi results, but they were cool. They had a vibe to them, because we were having fun and we were relaxed. And then when we go into do we write everything, we go into the big studio that was really expensive and intimidating. We were always kind of chasing what we had on that little 4-track machine, So it was kind of a lesson for us, and
And to this day, Jeff Pilson and I, still talk about that. We built our studios with that in mind. And they're an extension of our, of who we are, just like guitars and amps and everything else that's a part of our musical creative world.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, going back to those days, I mean, some of my favorite guitar tones are on those early day Dokken albums. And, just being able to have that signature sound that you've been able to build. And then, whether it be Dokken or any of the amazing works that you've been able to do with your other bands and projects, especially in the last decade or so. I mean, it's awesome to see that you're able to keep finding that sound no matter what band or project you're a part of.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's I don't know why that keeps happening, but you spend all this time kind of tone questing and searching for something, and then you think you settle on something, and you establish something, and then you go beyond that. You keep turning over more rocks and looking for more, and trying to advance and evolve your sound and so forth, and you end up going right back to where you started. I found that happen to me quite a few times in my life, where I go, the thing that sounded the best was what I used 30 years ago. So a lot of times it's just in the head and the heart and the hands.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So with that in mind, I mean, when it came into working with Dirty Shirley, like what was your mindset going into it when you started writing the songs for it?
Well, initially, believe it or not, I was not real sure what the project was about. It was actually a project that was brought to me by Frontier Records, and I wasn't a band that grew out of me organically or somebody, me and a bandmate or anything. It was just brought Dino and I together, but didn't really introduce him to me in any way that I understood who he was. And for some reason, I'm not sure why I had this impression. I thought he was an Italian pop singer, and I wrote songs correspondingly, what I thought would be suitable for that kind of project, which I thought would be interesting. I thought, well, good singer is a good singer. I hadn't even heard his voice yet. And then, of course, when I heard what he did over the first couple songs, I went, whoa, okay, this is not a pop singer. This is like Ronnie James Dio meets David Coverdale.
Oh, totally. And yeah, Dino just has one of my favorite voices going on in rock and hard rock going on right now. I mean, he just has this great distinct voice, and it's so great to see someone being able to use the pipes that he does, and it's great to be able to see that in Dirty Shirley as well.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I get goosebumps listening to it, and quite honestly, he kind of makes my guitar work sound a little flaccid in relation to, when he sings, he has so much youthful energy, and it's just, hair-raising. I mean, what he's doing is just, and I'm sort of like, I felt like I should have went back and took brought my guitar up to another level just so that it compared well to what he was doing. I was, but that's okay. You know what? I'm a fan of singers. I think that's what's important. I'm here to serve the song and the project. It's not all about me. And when I write a song, I mean, I'm listening in my head, for the vocal. That's what I'm imagining that, it needs to be there. I'm just cog in the wheel, really. So, I do my parts, I do my solos, I write my songs, my instrumental part of it. And then, it's all a bid for Dino, for him to do his magic.
Yeah, and again, that's the amazing thing about this record. When I listen to it, I mean, it really does sound like all four of you were just sitting in the studio working on these songs together, because it gels together so well. And I think that just goes with the power of what you're able to come up with on guitar, the amazing rhythm section, and everything that Dino is able to do with his voice. And it's great to see the versatility that goes along with that as well, because, I mean, I feel like if it was just like more of kind of just like a straight up rock album the entire time, it might not have had the same effect. But the fact that there is so much diversity on here, whether it gets heavy, whether it gets bluesy, a great ballad, I mean, it's a great album, which is great to see in 2020.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's got some variety on it, which I think is very important. Show some diversity and some depth, and why not? When I'm working on a record like this, I'm thinking, well, I think back to the records that I loved listening to and still do love listening to in my era, growing up, late 60s and 70s.
Zeppelin records and Queen albums, and Beatles records. There's so much variety in there. It's such deep, expansive exploration of different ideas. I thought, well, and don't be afraid to explore those things on these records. I think that's important, to give yourself the freedom to stretch out a little bit. And I think in the long term, it makes for an interesting record for the listener. There might not, the short term, people might be a little disappointed. I remember I was listening to some of my Zeppelin records later on, after the first couple Zeppelin records or Jeff Beck records, which I really liked, just the basic blues rock thing that they did. And then they, obviously turned into the Zeppelins and all the Queen and the other bands that they just evolved, and it became huge and became this really expansive, complex, musical force, and it took me a while to appreciate that, because I just wanted my simple meat and potatoes stuff. But I hope that and I've always assumed that the people that listen to the kind of music that I'm involved in and our fans will take the time to appreciate it and really want that. They want to see it. I would hope that artists are allowed to stretch out a little bit. It's healthy.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I love that you are a part of so many bands and projects, and you keep continuing to get your name out there, because creativity never really goes away as long as you have a means to be able to use that creativity. And whether it was Dokken, whether it's Dirty Shirley, whether it's KXM, whether it's any of the stuff that you're able to do, I mean, when you have these ideas and you have a means to be able to seek it out and see what that creativity could have, I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but when you focus on what you think is good and you're able to follow through with it, I mean, that's going to be such a great feeling.
Yeah. I mean, why write the same song over and over again? I mean, obviously there's some bands that we want them to tread over the same territory over and over again, like AC/DC, or maybe, I don't know, another example, Judas Priest or Black Sabbath or something to a lesser extent, but Van Halen, I mean, those bands do stretch out a bit, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, they have a core sound and the concept behind it. You wouldn't want them to stray from that too much. But I'm not captured by those limitations, partially due to lack of success. So I mean, I'm not that level of. I'm not selling millions of records and having established this thing that I can't deviate from. So it comes with a certain amount of freedom, which I try to take advantage of.
Yeah, and with that as well too, it's just like, I mean, the fact that you do have that means to financially be able to build that studio and express that creativity that's going on there as well, that you might not necessarily get if you were the guitarist of a pop singer and just focusing on the same three chords all the time or whatever. So when you don't have to focus on that part as a day job, and you're able to just like focus on what's attractive to you on the guitar and musically, and the kind of vocalists that you get to work with, I mean, it's not always the most financially beneficial, but for creativity, it's going to leave you happy.
Right. Well, I'd be happy if I was firing on all cylinders and I can have all, I'm selling millions of records, and I think you create an artistic. You pursue an artistic endeavor because you're compelled to, but also because you think the compulsion is due to the fact that there's an appeal to it and a need for it, and hopefully there's that other half of the equation, and there's a response. There's an appreciation. There's somebody out there that's going to complete the circle by appreciating it, listening to it, responding to it, identifying with it. So that's a part of the creative process, and if that doesn't get fulfilled, it can be very frustrating. Not on a business level, but just on a satisfaction level. Oh. Not an even satisfaction, but on a creative satisfaction level.
Oh, very much so. So, with that in mind, when it comes to Dirty Shirley, what have you heard as far as that reception for the album so far?
Well, it's not out until January 24th, but I have heard the little bit that I've seen from responses from people that have heard the first couple tracks that we released. I don't think I've seen anything negative. So
there's no history with Dirty Shirley to go on there. So there's not like, well, this isn't as good as the first record. There's none of that. And you really can't argue with Dino's vocals. You really can't argue with Will Hunt's drumming. So, but I haven't seen anything negative. So
yeah, and it's great to hear that too. I mean, I wasn't sure if you heard anything from like previous interviews or anything like that when it came to Dirty Shirley, when it came to the whole album, like I got to hear. But the fact that the singles are getting that great reception, I mean, that's fantastic to hear that too. And I think once people get to be able to check out the whole album, like I've been graciously able to do in a couple weeks from now, I think hopefully they have that same response that I do. It's just like, it feels like an amazing album from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, not that they really have albums anymore, but that was the idea, is to create that album experience, like you're dropping the needle on the first track. Hey, I'm going to have to move on to my next interview right now. I have him on hold.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I was just about to wrap things up and everything, so I think that's actually a great spot to be able to do that. And I won't hold them up any longer, but thank you for taking the time to do this, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
All right, thank you. Talk soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.